Greetings from the vault of Mrs. Manning's motivational lessons. Today I will use the book Hip Hop Speaks to Children, edited by poet Nikki Giovanni, to teach reading skills. This book is a compilation of poems, sermons, and rap lyrics from the times of slavery through today. They show the rich history of spoken word and the various uses that spoken word has served over the years. It has colorful illustrations, and it talks about topics that are very appropriate and challenging for upper elementary and middle school children. It talks about self-esteem and race issues. It talks about how hip-hop is actually poetry. It talks about feelings, and it talks about literature itself. And there's a poem called Books, and there are poems about mothers and children and their relationships. There's also Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s I Have a Dream speech. And on the pages you see here, this track and the headphones, that signals that the track is actually on the CD that comes with the book. Read by one of the poets or one of the rap artists like Lauryn Hill or Queen Latifah, all of the wonderful artists who got together to do this book. So poetry is commonly used in the upper grades, but I think it's great to get students interested in poetry in lower elementary school, and it's easy to do this if you get fun, motivational, rhythmic poems to inspire them. So when using poetry, you can teach most of the same skills that you can use with other children's literature, like punctuation, parts of speech, synonyms and antonyms, and phonics. This lesson will be geared for a second grade classroom. And some of the Common Core standards this lesson touches on are reading literature fluency, read with sufficient accuracy and fluency to support comprehension, read grade level text orally with accuracy, appropriate rate, and expression on successive readings, describe how words and phrases like regular beats, alliteration, rhymes, and repeated lines supply rhythm and meaning in a story, and reading foundation skills, knowing spelling sound correspondences for additional common vowel teams. Today, I will be working with the poem, Allow Me to Introduce Myself. I would work with this poem with various skills over the course of several days with the students. So on the first day, I'm going to focus on day 3, but I would just briefly talk to you about day 1 and 2. On the first day, I would talk about the title. I would just say the title, Allow Me to Introduce Myself, and at that point, ask the students what comes to mind, and invariably, Hove, my name is Hove, a reference to Jay-Z, who has a line in one of his songs about that that comes up, and so you can see who has a relationship with hip hop in your classroom, and especially more popular artists like Jay-Z. You can ask them what they think the poem will be about and how they introduce themselves to different people. Do they have different nicknames? That kind of thing to set up the pre-reading prep for the poem. And then I would play the poem for the students, which I'm going to do for you now.
Allow me to introduce myself. They call me the showstopper, the dime dropper, the spin move to the left, reverse jam popper, the high flyer on the high wire, the intense rattling noise amplifier, the net shaker, backboard breaker, creator of the funky dump hip shaker, the man, so slam, the legend I be. That's just a few of the names they call me.
All right. So that's the poem, and that poem is about basketball. This is an author, Charles Smith Jr., who's bragging about his basketball skills, that he's a showstopper and a dime dropper, and he's a high flyer on the high wire. So lots of wonderful descriptors for his basketball skills. I would talk to the students about the author's tone, the confident braggadocious tone, I would teach them that word, ask them if they think he's exaggerating and why. And I would also start a vocabulary list that we would start defining that day. And the next day, we would read the poem again together, and we would review the vocabulary words from the day before, expanding on them and touching on any new vocabulary words. And then we would do things like word sorts for the different word families, like stopper and dropper, flyer and amplifier. We would talk about the different phonemes in those words, and we would read the poem again together. And this time we would concentrate on modeling how to read with expression, with gestures, and how to pause after each line. And this is the setup for the next day. So the next day, after reviewing the other vocabulary words that came up from the day before, we would start to pull the descriptors apart. And depending on how many students there were in the class, I would pair them up or put them in groups of 3, and each group would choose a descriptive line from the poem to work with, like showstopper, or the spin move to the left, or the backboard breaker. And the students would work together to come up with some kind of visual or gesture or some way to act out their phrase. They could use props to do this, and so they're going to practice the gesture that they're going to make. For instance, if they do the spin move to the left, they would maybe do like a spin move to the left for their gesture, and so that's what they would do while they were saying their phrase. So they're going to practice this, and then we're all going to get up together, and each group will take turns. When it's their turn, we would hold up their sentence strip, and they would say their line and do their gesture, and the poem would proceed like that until we get to the end of the poem, and then we would all read, and that's just a few of the names they call me. So this would be a very interactive activity for the students that they would have a lot of fun with. They would get to practice fluency and comprehension of the words and enunciation. And then another follow-up activity would be to have the students come up with their own poems about how they would introduce themselves and how wonderful and magnificent they are. So that's it for today. Thank you for joining me. Bye-bye.